Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. So in today's video I wanted to do my January wrap-up, all of the books that I read this month. It's hard to believe that we already have it's hard to believe that we already have 1 month of 2025 under. I almost said 2020. Time is a crazy thing. The older I get, the faster it flies by, but it also feels like every single day is just dragging. I don't know, that might just be me though. What I was going to say was, it's hard to believe that we finally have 1 month of the year under our belts. January always feels like it goes by so quickly, but so slowly at the same time. So I read 9 books in the month of January, which is a little bit on the lower end. January is usually my highest reading month, but I did kind of fall into a bit of a slump at the beginning of the year, which is unusual because the first book that I read took me till January 12th, and then the last 8 books that I read were read after the 12th. So the very beginning of the year I definitely was kind of slumpy, but I did make up for it. So I am okay with the fact that I only read 9 books. And those 9 books include 3 fiction, 2 drama, 2 mystery, and 2 fantasy. So kind of a little bit of a variety. Some of the books were a little bit harder to categorize than others though, because they consist of multiple genres. I feel like most books nowadays consist of multiple genres, but I kind of tried to fit them in the best that I could. And my average book rating for this month was 3.4 stars out of 5. So it definitely could have been worse. Like, I did have a 5-star book, which those are far and few between. At least there's that. At least I had that. So the very first book that I read this month was A Little Life by Hana Yanagihara. I told myself at the end of 2024, actually for like multiple months towards the end of 2024, that I had to read this as the first book that I read in 2025, because it's like a little bit embarrassing how long it took me to actually pick up this book, considering the fact that I had it on my TBR as like a book that I desperately wanted to read for like 2 years. Like, this wasn't just a book that I bought and I was like, I'll probably get to it eventually. This was a book that I saw so many people reading and bawling their eyes out over that I just knew that I wanted to experience that. So it's crazy that I put it off for so long, and I don't know why I did that. I feel like I have this problem where I wait for the perfect moment to read a book and then I never end up reading the book because the perfect moment never comes. So I figured, what more of a perfect moment could there be than January 1st? So that's what I did. I started reading it, and it took me 12 days to read this book, which is a long time for me. Mind you, the book is over 800 pages and it's pretty heavy. Like, the subject matter of this one is heavy, so I don't know if I would recommend this. This is the 5-star, by the way. I mentioned that I had 1 5-star this month. This was that. The very first book that I read of 2025 was a 5-star. So hopefully that kind of sets the tone for the rest of the year. I loved this book, but I also hated this book so much. Yeah, I don't really have anything else to say about this other than if you think that you might want to read this book, do your research. I did not do my research other than halfway through reading the book, when I spoiled myself for something that happens at the end by Googling how old the characters are in this book. So yeah, but I loved it nonetheless. Okay, the next book that I read in January is another really sad one. This is You've Reached Sam by Dustin Tao. This one was less sad than that one because this one was YA. I still cried just because the concept of this book is so sad to me. It follows, I think our main character is 17 and her boyfriend of 3 years passes away, and then she starts getting phone calls from him. So she's still talking to him, and just the idea of my significant other passing away makes me very sad, as I'm sure it would most people. So it was not by any means easy for me to read this book, but it was easy. I think the writing style made it easier, and the fact that it was like, we followed a 17-year-old girl, so I don't know, it was really well written. I don't want to like give you the wrong idea about this book, that I didn't like the way that the book was written, because it was a very good book, but it was YA, and I have a harder time connecting to younger characters, and I don't know, I feel like I'm getting older and I'm just sort of growing out of my young adult fiction phase. Okay, the next book that I have is Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. This is a book that I got for Christmas in 2023, and I didn't read it until now. So, I mean, I finally read it, so that's good. I really want to read No, I don't. I really want to watch the movie that goes along with this book. Did I mention that I rated You've Reached Sam 3 stars and this book is 4 stars? I don't think I have, but now you know. Yeah, I didn't know anything about this book before reading it. Like, I had no idea that it was technically classified as like a mystery. It wasn't like a thrilling mystery. It was more like, I don't know, it was like general fiction with a little bit of mystery thrown in there, but it's like not really a mystery. You kind of know, or at least I kind of knew the answer to the mystery. I don't know. I didn't know anything about it until I read it, and now I read it and I really thoroughly enjoyed it, rated it 4 stars, and I'm very excited to watch the movie because I've heard excellent things about the movie. Okay, the next book that I read in January is It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. Now, this was a reread. I read it 2 years ago and I hated it, and I wanted to read it again in light of all of the stuff going on surrounding the movie. It just started made me think about it, and I was like, I should reread that book and then maybe watch the movie. We'll see how I feel. I reread the book and I rated it 2 stars. I still don't like it. I looked up the genre to this book and it was categorized under romance. And that just feels inaccurate because it's like a book about domestic violence. So I put this under the fiction category when I rated it. That's why I haven't read any romance books, because I just feel like this isn't really romance. Yeah, I feel like because I put myself through this all over again, I have to watch the movie now. So I probably will do that, but regardless, 2 stars. Pretty sure it was 2 stars the first time I read it too. I don't know why I figured my mind would change when I reread it. I just don't really think I like Colleen Hoover's writing style. I just don't think it's for me. Okay, next up was another reread, and that was a reread of Verity, and also by Colleen Hoover. I don't know why I did this to myself. Actually, I kind of do, because like I said, I didn't like It Ends With Us the first time I read it, and I didn't like it the second time, but I did like this. I didn't like love it. I'm pretty sure I gave it 3 stars the first time I read it, and I reread it thinking, I don't know, maybe this one would be better. I think that Colleen Hoover is better at writing thrillers, but I still don't think she's for me, because I gave this book 2.5 stars. So it was slightly better than It Ends With Us, but it was not great by any means. I can't really say that upon the reread I felt like this was predictable, because I mean, obviously I know it's going to happen, so I'm going to be able to predict what happens. But I do remember the first time reading it, finding it very predictable. So it wasn't really my favorite thing. The next book, I had a bunch of rereads. I had 4 rereads this month. Almost half of the books that I read were rereads, and they were all in a row. The next book that I read, which was a reread, was The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I'm pretty sure the first time I read this book, I gave it 3 stars or maybe 3.5 stars. And I feel like I just gave up and didn't read the last like 3 chapters of the book, because you'd think that rereading something, you would know what was going to happen. I didn't expect the ending of this at all. I feel like I did not read that. Like, reading the entire first 90% of the book, I knew everything that was happening. I was enjoying it significantly more the second time reading it this time rather than I did last time, but I still knew what was going to happen. I think maybe knowing what was going to happen made me enjoy it more and made me focus on the details more. But the last 10% of the book, like the last few chapters, I don't remember reading that at all. So I don't know what was going on there, but I definitely enjoyed this way more the second time. I gave it 4.5 stars. It was really good. I've only read 2 Taylor Jenkins Reid's book. I've only read 2 Taylor Jenkins Reid's books. I've only read 2 of Taylor Jenkins Reid's books. I reread them both this month, and this is definitely my favorite of the 2. I never thought that I would enjoy reading about famous people, but there's something about it that I did thoroughly enjoy, specifically with this book. And the next book that I have, which I'm sure that you can predict because I just kind of alluded to it, I reread Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid, of course. Now, rereading this book was an interesting experience because I really like Fleetwood Mac, but the first time I read this book, I did not know that Daisy Jones and the Six was loosely based on Fleetwood Mac and Stevie Nicks as Daisy. I didn't know that the first time I read it, but knowing that piece of information, I don't even know where I read it. I read it somewhere, but I found out that it was loosely inspired by Daisy Jones and the Six. No. I found out that Daisy Jones and the Six was loosely inspired by Fleetwood Mac, and that did make me enjoy it more the second time. I also listened to the audiobook of this. I followed it along while I was reading just to kind of keep my mind straight, but I wanted to listen to the audiobook because something interesting about this particular audiobook is that it has a full cast of characters, which most audiobooks obviously aren't like that unless it's like a dramatized one. Typically it's one person reading the whole story to you, but this had an entire cast of characters. And unlike Evelyn Hugo, I do remember the sort of, not twist ending, but I do remember the ending of this book. So I don't really know. I still don't know what was going on there, but okay. The next two books that I read are fantasy books from the same series, and they're not like novels. They're kind of like a collection of short stories to prepare me, because in the month of February, I would like to go through and read The Grisha Universe by Leigh Bardugo. I have read Shadow and Bone. I'm going to reread that trilogy so that I can read the duology, but I wanted to read these next two books as kind of like a preface, just to get more immersed in the world before I went and read those books. And that is The Lives of Saints by Leigh Bardugo, which is the first book, and then The Language of Thorns by Leigh Bardugo, which is the last book that I read this month. First of all, with The Lives of Saints, basically it just tells the origin story of all of the saints in the Grisha universe. I don't know, I found it really interesting. It kind of felt like bedtime stories, like the kinds of stories or cautionary tales that you would tell children before bedtime. That's what it felt like, and it was really interesting because they were not of this world. They're from a completely different world. So obviously, because that's literally what fantasy is. I don't know, I just really liked it, and I liked the artwork that's in this book. It just, I don't know, it was really quick. I read it in one day during my accumulative 1 hour of lunch breaks, or breaks that I get at work. That's how long it took me to read this, an hour. So it was super quick, super easy, and I did enjoy it. I did also rate this book 3 stars, but I would say that this is like, I enjoyed it slightly more. There was more to it. This was very much like bedtime stories, even more so than that one. They're longer. Language of Thorns, Midnight Tales, and Dangerous Magic. So this one felt even more like bedtime stories than The Lives of Saints. It's just a bunch of fairy tales. Like, I'm pretty sure that there's one inspired by Hansel and Gretel. There's one inspired by The Little Mermaid. They're like twisted fairy tales in the Grisha universe. I am glad that I read this. It was very interesting. I would just read like one before bed each night. It was quick to read. I'm happy that I read it, and I'm very excited to read the trilogy, Shadow and Bone trilogy, and the Six of Crows duology this month, hopefully. But yeah, I don't really have anything else to say about that. Like I said, I only read 9 books this month, so I'm hoping that this video will be short and sweet. That's kind of how I would like it. Thank you for watching nonetheless, and I will see you in the next video. If you'd like to come back, it would be greatly appreciated.